the number of hate crimes in England and Wales has fallen in other news for the first time in a decade.
But the number of transgender identity hate crimes recorded last year is the highest since records began.
The Home Office said that this increase could result from issues being, quote, heavily discussed by politicians, the media and on social media, but also increased police awareness, resulting in more recorded crime.
Well, joining us to discuss this further is former Met Police Detective Peter Bleksley and friend of the programme, may I add. Peter, always good to see you. What do you make of these figures then? So hate crime across the board is coming down, but not if you're religious or transgender. Those figures have gone up.
I'm very sorry for pouring cold water all over this story, but as the Home Office admit when they presented these figures yesterday, they're not reliable. And I'll go a step further and say they're utterly worthless. Some of the reasons why they're not reliable is, first of all, Devon and Cornwall's hate crime figures aren't included because they're rolling out a new IT system. Secondly, of course, we know that many police forces are completely in a state of confusion as to what is a hate crime and what isn't. And we've seen many, many deeply worrying examples of police officers turning up to arrest people for some kind of message they may have put out on social media, only for that later to have been found entirely unnecessary. But the one area in which they can be regarded as reliable is that it gives you an indication as to how much work the police are doing in terms of investigating these. So in that regard, the demand on police time, we can rely on them, but pretty much in any other regard, they're fit for the bin.
Now, these numbers are about hate crimes, recorded crimes. I would assume that's not just sort of logging something that has been alleged. What's the difference between a hate crime recorded and what has been discussed to the ends of the earth, a non-crime hate incident?
Yes, and I'm quickly losing the will to live, as you mentioned, the bare subject. It is utterly catastrophic because, of course, the police shouldn't be getting them involved in something so complicated and rather stupidly described as you just did. No personal slur, Tom. It's their terminology, and it's utterly ludicrous. And of course, another aspect to throw into the mix here is there is a vast amount of unrecorded crime that people simply don't go to the police with. And how can I say that? Because every day, almost every day, I speak to people who tell me about a crime that they were the subject of and they did not bother to report because they knew or they felt that they were not going to get a police investigation. And this is why, at the moment, crime statistics are really unreliable in regards to the overall picture. And on a day when we're told about yet another teenager being stabbed to death, tragically in Brighton yesterday, what that will do is merely encourage more young people to take a knife onto the streets. Those crimes won't be detected unless people are stopped, searched and found with a knife. And consequently, this is just yet another area of crime, worrying, troubling crime, like hate crime, that we do not know the accurate scale of the problem.
OK, Norman Baker, let's bring you in at this point. What do you make of what Peter Bleksley is saying?
Well, I tend to agree with Peter's analysis, to be perfectly honest with you. But there are two sorts of recorded crime. There's recorded crime officially from the police, and there's a National Crime Survey, which is undertaken by the Home Office, which is actually a slightly better guide to what's going on. And what is perfectly plain is there are a huge range of offences being committed, which people don't even bother telling the police about these days. For example, there's an epidemic of bicycle theft in my part of the world. But people don't even bother telling the police. I mean, there's no chance of getting the bicycle back. There's no chance, probably, of the police even investigating it or even turning up to record it. So, we have to recognise that the police are actually undertaking tasks which they regard as important with the manpower they've got, but a whole range of other things are not being reported or not being followed through. Shoplifting is another one. Yeah. There's a major problem with shoplifting, as retailers have demonstrated. We've now got the situation where people walk into shops apparently and just walk out, as cool as you like, carrying a whole lot of stuff, and the police don't necessarily investigate that.
I've witnessed crimes
I saw
like
that happen
I've witnessed
yesterday.
it. I've witnessed it. It's happening the length and breadth of the country. And really, these crime stats, I do agree that the National Crime Survey does have some more credibility. But then, of course, I saw somebody taking part in that survey only last year, and the questions really are steered in a direction to give people the results they want. So I'm not a huge fan of that
better
either.
though, Peter, isn't it?
It is marginally better. And it is absolutely true, and nobody in the media is scandalising or scaremongering when we use the expression lawless Britain. It is absolutely a fact that day by day we become less and less safe out there. Now, I'm not harem-scarem, but I feel that I am being responsible as a contributor to mention the levels of crime out there in order that people can take precautions, can protect their homes, can protect their bikes, their phones, any other property, their vehicles, for example, because crime is simply everywhere and it's completely out of hand.
Okay.
Now, do we have time for
We're going to have a quick one.
A quick one. I just do want to mention the numbers here, because it is interesting. Overall hate crime, as recorded, race incidents have been decreased by 6%. Now, there are over 100,000 of those, but they're down by 6%. Now, the other half of the headline that we hear is that transgender hate incidents are up, but that number's less than 5,000. So race incidents over 100,000 and down, and transgender incidents under 5,000 but up. I wonder, are we perhaps putting too much emphasis on something that's too small?
This is how the media, not talking about GBNews particularly, but how the media will report something which is, for them, new and interesting. So you have, for example, a huge amount of attention paid to, say, bird flu, which was a novel idea and affected almost nobody, and very little attention paid to heart disease or cancer, which is just accepted as part of society and which kill thousands of people. So, you know, the focus on transgender crime is because it's new and interesting rather than because it's more serious.
Okay.
And of course, transgender people make up a tiny, tiny proportion of the population, so it comes as no surprise to me that the level of offences there are relatively small.
So perhaps actually as a proportion of that community it could be more serious. That's a very...
Indeed it could, yes.
So that's a very, very important qualifier there. Well, thank you both for talking through the general state of crime and indeed hate crime and even non-crime hate incidents.